9 years, coming close to a decade this January. This is my good friend Mandy Yates. She's going to be asking me the questions that you guys have asked during the week, whether it came from Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or questions that we received from our clients, even if you asked a question with your Amazon Echo. But I'm going to be going over those questions in detail as you ask them to me. We've got a pretty extensive list tonight, so a lot of questions that have already come in. But hey, welcome to each and every one of y'all. We appreciate each and every one of you guys that's watching, and I guess we'll get started with the first question. Okay,
Yep.
Go ahead. So number one.
First question is, what do I do if my dog develops a hardwood phobia?
For phobias, actually a lot of dogs actually struggle with that in the beginning. I've seen a lot of puppies here over the past couple of weeks that when I'm trying to introduce them to the elevated bed, that they actually have a hard time with understanding. So I see them very tentatively putting their foot on there, getting a little worried about it, and then taking their foot off. And dogs will develop that on tile, on hardwood. I've even seen dogs that avoid grass. I've seen dogs that avoid concrete. Dogs will avoid a lot of different surfaces. So the one thing that you don't want to do for your dog that might be a little worried about floors is remove all that flooring out of the environment. Because really all you're doing is you're just kind of keeping your dog safe from something that is just inevitably going to happen. Okay, your dog is going to see this type of flooring sometime somewhere in your home. So if you have hardwood in your home and you're thinking about, hey, we're just going to put a whole bunch of rugs down, what tends to happen with these dogs is that they're just going to go what I call island hopping. They're going to go from one rug, dash across the hardwood to get to the next rug, dash across and get to the next one. So do not cover all of your hardwood with different rugs. So what do you do actually? Well, the first thing that I'd recommend doing is don't panic, okay? Don't panic about this problem, okay? It actually will naturally, almost always, just fix itself. Now, don't try to fix it for the dog by doing what I just said, is by covering all these different areas with the rugs. Put your dog's food out somewhere on the ground that is in the middle of this exposed area, and let your dog come out of their crate, come out of the room that they're in, and begin to eat the food that's just there on the floor. It might take some patience. Now, there are some other things you can do. Let's just say that your dog is already trained to do some things like place training, or they know how to come when called. Use your training and use your tools in conjunction to get them to do those things. So if your dog is already pretty good at going on their place, get them to come off their place. Get them to calmly walk on the floor by using some gentle leash guidance. When you get them onto the floor and they actually walk well with you, begin to feed your dog. But I want you to be real careful about how you pet them and how much food you give them when they're actually nervous. I have found that when a dog is actually nervous about something, that if you merely just start getting repetitions of the things that's scary for them, while you yourself are calm, that the dogs actually begin to calm a lot better in those situations. So, don't freak out. Get your dog over the hardwood floor. Get your dog over that strange surface, and begin to help your dog by showing them that it's going to be fine, making them actually interact with it, and that's really the best advice that I can give there. Okay, what's next?
My dog is perfectly behaved at home, but not at doggy daycare. What can I do?
Well, this is a pretty interesting question, and I don't want to sound like, I'm some kind of hard ass, but I would say, like, if your dog is truly well behaved at home and your dog is misbehaving at doggy daycare, then it's probably time to fire your doggy daycare if they can't handle your dog for being there. And I'm not trying to be too hard. There's a lot of really good doggy daycares and a lot of professionals, but let's just say that your dog is pretty good with you, is good around other dogs, is good with your company, is good with your neighbors, is good with things in and around your home, and is even good with you when you walk into the doggy daycare, but the moment you leave, then you hear a bunch of complaints from the people that the dog isn't so good. Well, what are they doing about it? Like, how are they helping the dog to understand that these behaviors that the dog is doing at the doggy daycare are actually unwanted? Now, I'm not trying to be too hard on them, but it's just really obvious to me that if and of course this is a big if your dog is well behaved and well socialized in your home and they're not behaving that way at the doggy daycare, then it's time to switch. However, you might ask them, to be a little bit more specific, like what is it specifically that my dog is doing? Is your dog being, too hard in play with the other dogs, or is your dog, nipping at people? Well, then it's time for you to go out and see, like, if you can reproduce that problem. And if you can't, then it truly is their issue and not so much yours. But heck, it could be your issue if they get kicked out and then you don't have a good place to take. But I'd start looking around if your dog is truly well-mannered in your presence, in your neighborhood, and just acts badly when they're with the professionals. That might show you a sign of that they might not actually be able to do what they say that they can do.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Okay. How do I teach my German Shepherd to heel?
I really like this question because I get asked a couple of times a week by my clients, and they'll ask me, why do we say let's go to our dogs? And most trainers actually tell the dog to heel. Well, for those of you guys that don't know me, I actually got my start in dog training with a German Shepherd named Jasmine. And in my path, with her, I ended up learning about a dog sport that's called Schutzhund. And Schutzhund is a protection dog sport. And so what I learned in the sport is that the way that dogs actually walk with us is not the way that they actually heel. So I actually learned that walking and heeling are actually two different things. So when it comes to actually teaching your German Shepherd to heel for you, well, you want to create what's called focused heeling. And a lot of that has to do with the way that you're going to feed your dog on a daily basis and the way you begin to develop your play relationship with your dog. So I think that once your dog has actually learned how to heel with the use of food, with lures on the left-hand side of your body or even in between your legs with their head pointed straight up in the air, that you've taught them this and you can see that it's progressing, that you're no longer having to have the food in hand, then the best way to continue to teach them and to grow the dog is to get some kind of game involved. And for me and my dogs, like with Gabby and with Fritz, I love to play with a ball and a string, and I love to play with a tug toy or even with a protection helper, and that's really the ultimate for me. But start by luring your German Shepherd puppy, getting them on the left-hand side. Make sure you know what that position looks like. As a matter of fact, if you look what's on my shirt right now, this is the way that I actually teach the dogs to get in heel. I have them sit by my left-hand side, and I want to bias their head pointing up, because if I do that well, if I get the dog's head pointing up particularly well, and then I show them that I'm going to be moving with my left leg, then the dog actually learns how to move in this kind of strange way. I always kind of jokingly say this, but there's some truth to it. My mom used to tell my brother and I that, hey, if you boys keep making those faces, they're going to get stuck that way, because little boys and I guess little girls too make all sorts of strange faces that we shouldn't be making. But to that extent, I always would tell people, my clients, that, hey, get your dog's face stuck in the up position so that way they know that when they're walking that they should be actually looking up at you. So that can be a good way of going about it. So, hey guys, I want to tell each and every one of y'all, thank you all for watching tonight. If this is your first time here, then please ask any questions that you might have. I'm happy to answer any question. But, we have so many free resources out there, and just want to talk about this for a second. After the live show, I'll make sure that we've got links down in the description. But if you've never been to my website, man, we've got a bunch of information there. Anywhere from, obviously the different services that I offer, but I also have all the free dog training that we're giving away, whether it's on your Amazon Echo, whether you want to watch one of our super cool virtual reality videos, obviously the stuff that we got going on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. Heck, we've just got so much going on. As a matter of fact, this is one of the first times I've done this. As I'm filming this live show, I've also got a virtual reality camera right underneath that, because we're going to put some of the content from tonight's show into a VR video, so that way you can come back and kind of get in the scene and see what it looks like to be here. But hey, just want to say thank you to each one of you guys that's watching this tonight, whether you're watching tonight live or if you're watching some hours from now or sometime in the future. We appreciate each and every one of you guys joining us tonight. All right, so what's next?
Next is, how do I get my 3-month-old Belgian Malinois to stop nipping at us?
Belgian Malinois, a Belgian Malinois is a very, very powerful dog, especially the adult ones. And you know what the puppies are really known for? The puppies are just known for being just little unholy terrors. They're just going to latch on to everything that they possibly can. As a matter of fact, I see these memes all the time, and it's really funny because at the top of the meme, it'll say something like, Belgian Malinois math. And it'll say something like, if the Belgian Malinois has 3 balls and you take 2 of them away, like how many, bless you, and you take 2 of these balls away, how many fingers do you have left? And there's a lot of these memes that are like that. And the honest answer is that, hey.
It's funny because it's true.
Yeah, it really is true. Belgian Malinois puppies are extremely mouthy. So, not to make light, if you're a Belgian Malinois puppy owner and you want your dog to stop nipping you and they're less than 6.5 months of age, you're kind of in trouble because, this is what you bought. You bought a working dog that is a lot of dog. And so you actually don't get Belgian Malinois puppies to stop biting you. But what you do, and this is what I do with my German Shepherds and what I do with any working dog, is I begin to show them how to use their mouth in a way that can actually be really useful. I want the dogs to actually know that your mouth is something that is a good thing, but I need you to learn how to share. So if I give you something, I'm going to teach you how to fairly give it back to me, and I'm going to teach you how to get back into the game and begin to play with me. Now, I always recommend, if you're going to have a working puppy, God bless you if you get one in the summer, but if you get a working puppy, I always wear hoodies and I wear long sleeve pants pretty much every day for the first 6 months when I'm around them, because they're going to be biting you, okay? Especially if you get one that really has a lot of prey drive, which is who they are. And so if you get that puppy, make sure you're wearing clothing that's going to protect you from all this, from all the mouthiness. You are going to have to say no at some point, but you probably, if you have a dog like this and you've never trained one, you need to get a professional dog trainer involved to be able to do that, unless you have extensive experience with the breed. So you don't really get Belgian Malinois puppies to nip less, but man, it sure would be good to teach them to play some games by tugging, by playing fetch, by getting food involved and tossing that to them and showing them how to interact. But one thing for sure is do some place training with them so that way you can set some limits for how far they can go. Okay, what's next?
All right, so with 4th of July coming up, how do I call my dogs during fireworks?
I've thought about this question a lot this week, and I thought about making some content to be able, to help you guys. There's a lot of advice out there, and I'm taking some of the advice myself, anywhere from, like Fritz right now, he's here in the room with us, and he's had this thing going on with his nose for so long, and we've done so many different things, and it's gotten better, but like tonight he has some CBD oil, and it's the first time that I'm using that, and I'm not ready to recommend for it or recommend against it, but I'm really just kind of playing it out to see how it's going to help my dog. But one of the things that they talk about is that CBD oil can actually help calm dogs. Now I'll tell you, like, you guys probably can't see or hear this, but I let Fritz stay out for the live show, and boy is he just moving around a lot right now. So as far as it having a calming effect on Fritz, I see him really pretty active right now. And so I'm not going to say that's a definitive yes or no for CBD oil to calming, but I'm not seeing it right now. He's definitely calmer at other times. So one thing to consider are these types of medicinal herbs, but I'm nowhere near an expert, but that's something that some people do. Now, I'm a dog trainer. So what do? Well, you train. You teach the dogs to do things. One of the things that I probably should do in the middle of the show, but I'm thinking about you guys, is I should put him in a place command, and then if he starts not doing what I ask, he can actually get in trouble. But I don't necessarily want to do that right now. But you should use your training. You should use your training to tell the dog what is your Fritz, come here. Lay down. So we're gonna get him to settle right now because he's moving around just a little bit too much. Okay. So use your training. One of the greatest things that I don't even want to say greatest, but one of the pieces of advice that I gave somebody this week when we were actually dealing with something that was hard for the dog to deal with is get the dog's mind on something that they've previously done before that they've been really successful at. Whether it's focusing on you when they're walking, staying on their place, coming off and interacting with you in some way. But I think that dealing with dogs in the fireworks is really, in the moment, if they're going off, start doing things with your dog. Now, I don't mean to start petting your dog and cuddling your dog because they're afraid, but start working their brain so that way their brain is not so involved in everything that's going on outside, but really is more focused on what's actually happening in the moment together with you and them, okay? Don't feed their anxiety by petting them. Help them to actually get into a calmer state. Now, one thing that I do that actually does work particularly well is we have diffused essential oils in my home, lavender in particular, and that does seem to have a calming effect on the dogs. I can't give you a percentage of how much it calms the dog. We haven't run a science experiment, but I can see that the dogs are calmer when we do those things. I can also see that my dogs are calmer when we've played with them prior to some kind of exciting event. And so as you're thinking about that night, as more families and more folks are going to be doing fireworks and firecrackers over the next few nights, get involved in showing your dog how to be calm. Take them for walks, get them on their place, do some tricks with them. There's just a lot of different things that you can do, but definitely don't feed into their insecurities. That's what and don't go out in the middle of the fireworks with them too. Please, if you're hearing this, just spare your dog the anxiety. If they're already nervous, or if you don't know, just keep them inside is one of the best things you could do.
Turn up the TV really loud.
Yeah, turn the TV up really loud. That's a good piece of advice.
Okay, how do I teach my dogs to get along? They just keep fighting.
I got told this the other day. One of my clients, one of you guys said, like, man, you sure would be a great dad because you have all these rules. I'm like, well, I don't know about that, but I really do a good job with my own dogs. And, we've had, at any point in time, I've had up to 3 German Shepherds in my home. So I'm going to tell you what I think really keeps dogs from fighting. And it's the rules that you have in your house. So here's some rules that I have. No dog gets to initiate play inside of my home. So that's one rule. There's another rule that I have, and there's some consequences because of this rule. So the second rule that I have is that no puppy that's 4 months of age and less than 2 years of age gets to play with any other dog. They only get to play with me. And so one of the consequences of there's no play in the home initiated by dogs, and the other rule that puppies will not play with other dogs until they're 2, what that does is that puts a lot of the responsibility back on me. And what I'm noticing is that my dogs really pay attention to me. They really listen to the things that I'm asking them to do. And then as a consequence of that, when I begin to ask the dogs to interact with me, I can ask one dog to interact with me and the other one has enough respect for the thing that I'm asking them to do. And then vice versa. Like, I'll tell you this, and this is a problem with a lot of dogs. I can take a bowl of some very, very highly valuable food. For those of you guys that know what barbacoa is, or Hispanics, we eat cow's tongue and it's absolutely delicious. I'll put cow's tongue in a bowl and I'll have my German Shepherds come over and both of their faces are in the bowl eating it and not a care in the world that the other dog's face is next to them. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and do this because, I've really worked pretty hard to get them to trust each other and to trust me. But working with your dog on a daily basis, setting those rules, teaching that the inside of your home is a calm place is the way that I've gone about showing the dogs that, hey, this is what you're supposed to live. And because of that, we don't have fights. There's not going to be any fighting in my home because they just know that we run a pretty tight ship inside the home. In the backyard, it's a little bit different, but because I have control, they can play. But if they start getting out of hand, I just have to say, hey, and then they look at me and they're like, okay, we're about to start getting in trouble if we don't chill out soon. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. How do I keep my dog from biting the vacuum and lawnmower?
Sadly this week, there was a family that was out, had a very young puppy, It's it's a large breed puppy, but large breed puppy. Family member was out. Family member does not weigh a lot, and they were mowing their lawn, and then the dog got excited, came over and knocked down the person with a lawnmower. Lo and behold, broken pelvic bone. So it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough, and so like. It's a hard thing, and so I can't even imagine what it's like to be in your backyard or to be in your lawn and, cutting your grass, and that your dog just comes over and knocks them down. But I can tell you one thing for sure, and it has a lot to do with excitement, and it goes back to what I said a moment ago. What are the rules? What are the rules? These power tools are very powerful. Like I have some chainsaws, I've got weed eaters, lawnmowers, you name it, and most of the time when I'm out there doing that stuff, there's no dog around. Okay, especially with the chainsaw, I don't risk it. Like I probably have enough voice control to get them to do things, but man, accidents happen all the time, just like I mentioned. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to have your dog out there, make it easy for yourself. Tie the dog off to a tree or to a post or something like that, and put them on a downstay. But that way you get the redundancy of, hey, I told you to down and to stay there. And then the other thing that you have is, well, if you decide not to stay, well, then you're tethered and you're not actually going to come over here and start doing that. But let's just say that, and what's the say on the question, vacuum or lawnmower? Those kind of the same things. But look, let's get a little bit more practical, because these are things that have wheels. Mm-hmm. And there's another thing that I'm seeing that dogs actually will come and start biting a lot, a stroller. I've actually seen that here recently, that dogs are kind of afraid of this, afraid of the stroller. Well, it can be the noise. It could be any number, but like think about a bicycle. Like what type of bicycle tires? Yeah. Kids get chased on bicycles, and adults get chased on bicycles all the time. I've seen some adults on these speed bikes that have like some pretty serious weapons with them, sure. To stop dogs from, eating them, but. Like the answer is to create calmness in your dog, to teach your dog the boundaries of, how is it that you want me to be? Like, do I need to be in a stay? Do I need to be in a down? Do I need to be calmly by your side? So especially there with a stroller, go out if you're having a child sometime soon and you've already got your stroller, take your stroller out, take your dog out for a walk without having had the baby, and teach your dog how the rules that you taught them to walk by, that those same rules actually apply to your stroller, to your lawnmower, to your vacuum, to any of those things. There's a ton of videos on the internet. I don't necessarily have a lot of these. Maybe I'll do one here soon. But I use place training inside the home to teach the dogs how to be calm when they're on the vacuum. But the lawnmower is something that I'm probably going to keep the dogs away from. It's too powerful. A mistake could happen, and man, I couldn't live with myself the type of injury the dog would sustain if they were actually to get to the blades. Like they might even survive that. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-mm.
No, you should just not.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. So.
Okay, how do I get my dog to stop messing up my bed?
Well, I thought about this question a lot. Like, so why is your dog? Why is the dog messing up the bed in the first place? I'll tell you this. So my dogs sleep on the bed, and one of the things that I've taught them is that, heck, once I make my bed, and if you jump on there and you start spinning circles, then like heck, you're kind of gonna get in trouble if you do that. But it's always kind of binary for me in a lot of ways. I look at the dog and I want them to have really great lives. So my dogs are allowed, my adult dogs that are well behaved and respect me and value me, man, they're on the bed. So they get to be on the bed, and then I teach them to be calm. I'll tell you what, if I'm asleep in the middle of the night and the dogs decide to have a UFC match on my bed because they want to start wrestling, they're not going to like what happens next, okay? But to be fair, I'll probably just end up putting them in their crates, and they'll probably be in their crates in my bedroom for the next several months, because I don't want them to be practicing those kinds of things. But if your dog's messing up the bed, try closing the door, try doing some things to prevent your dog access to that. Put a leash on your dog. Then if you catch your dog on the bed, use your leash to get your dog to come off and then show your dog where they should have been. I'm not saying put them in the crate, but by God, you know, you got to teach the dog what it is that you actually want them to do. And if you don't know what that is, well, imagine something like look out and say, heck, I've seen videos on Instagram of Al getting his dogs to do this. Get them to do that. Make some kind of stay, a down stay, a sit stay, you know, a play stay, a crate stay. Maybe I need to do more crate stay videos. You know, that might be something that could be really useful. But for sure, if your dog is messing up on the bed, don't jump up on the bed. Start wrestling with them and showing them what a great place it is, because that's going to definitely continue it. So, all right, what's next?
How do I keep my dog from being destructive when anxious?
Yeah, that's tough for sure, and not many people will probably like this advice. But if your dog is, getting destructive, well, number one, this advice will make sense, but God, it's expensive advice. Get you an impervious crate. Go get you one of those Empire crates that's $300, $400, $500 or more that cannot be destroyed by your dog. You know, so get you one of those. Start massively doing place training to be able to help the dog understand that, hey, you've got to be calm more often than not. But, you know, the last piece of advice, which is the one that isn't going to be so popular, but, you know, you have to set a limit. Like, get a baby monitor, you know, learn how to do remote collar training, and then after your dog has been conditioned, if your dog begins to become anxious in the crate, tell him that you're not going to allow him to be in that state of mind by using the remote collar. On the back side of your dog actually becoming calm because you corrected him with the remote collar for being super anxious and destructive in the crate, then come and show him how good it is to be calm inside the crate. There's always two sides to the coin, and one thing that I don't like about talking punishment as much as we do is that punishment is how you get rid of any behavior. And it doesn't mean that we're injuring dogs or that you're injuring dog. Punishment just means something that's effective, that says this particular thing that you're doing needs to happen less. So the flip side to that, and the argument that a lot of people have, was why don't you just reward what it is that you want? Well, yeah, duh, that makes perfect sense. Reward the thing that you want, reinforce the things that your dog's doing. But if your dog is an anxious, nervous, destructive wreck and can't put his mind in a place for you to teach them that, then you're going to have to calm them down by some method. And frustration and becoming uncomfortable work well to punish behaviors. So once you've punished those behaviors, your dog has come out of this anxious, destructive state, and they were on their way there and you ended it. Now show them that there's a better way to live by getting involved with the dog and showing them how amazing it is to actually be calm inside the crate. And start simple. But for sure, punishment solves any answer to get rid of behavior, because by definition, punishment is a thing that reduces the rate of behaviors. But then do the hard work of building the habit that you want your dog to do.
Okay. Next question is, my dog won't stop jumping in our koi pond. How do I stop this?
Yeah, you know, so a koi, that can be really very interesting for a dog. And man, I can only imagine,
Yeah.
I don't eat koi. Mandy, do you eat koi?
No.
No, okay.
No, but if I were a dog, I'd probably.
Yeah, you'd probably want to eat koi. Well,
or want to play.
Yeah, probably want. Well, my neighbor has chickens. So my neighbor has chickens, and I think it's been 2 times now that we've got chickens in the backyard, and my German Shepherds were back there.
Oh no.
And well, yeah. So.
Oh no.
Yeah. Look, the chickens lived and continue to live as far as I know. But I'll tell you this. Well, and you know,
Thanks for adding that in there.
Yes. Okay. The chickens are alive.
Okay.
The chickens, as far as I know, my dogs did not eat those chickens. But man, was it close to happening?
I would imagine.
Was it close to happening? You know, so you know, my dogs are kind creatures. I really think that a German Shepherd is a very, very kind dog, and they care about. But you know, they have prey drive, and you're in their domain, and you're flapping your wings around and clucking like you sound like a squeak toy. Maybe I should put my mouth on you.
Yeah.
So, you know. So when it comes to the koi pond and the chickens in my backyard, well, introduce your dogs to your koi. I can just envision this beautiful backyard with all these poles some of these different oriental plants around, and just beautiful landscape lighting.
The dog just psh.
And I can just see the dog just jumping in there and eating, coming up with a koi in their mouth and say, "Look, Mom, look what I got. Look how proud," So take your dog on a leash around the koi pond and show them that you're going to take a nice, relaxing walk around there. And then as your dog is in a calm state of mind, stroke them and pet them and tell them what a good dog they are. Say what a good girl you are, or what a good boy you are as you're petting them, and then walk them around some more. And then maybe go out there again with them and take a long leash with you. And if they start to think about it, reel the dog in and help settle them down, and then tell them what a good dog they are and help them figure out that, hey, being back here is good. But, don't overly fast your dog and give your dog no options for food, where the koi is going to be a great option, but teach them how to be calm. Because I think most dogs really, like we see so many videos, most dogs really care about other animals quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've seen dogs with wildlife and different creatures, and I think they do a phenomenal job of showing their care for that. But look, a lot of them do have prey drive, and that prey drive is really going to come when they're excited by something. So help them out by putting a leash on them and teaching them that, hey, we'd like you to be calm around our koi, and just to be in our nice, relaxing atmosphere. I can just imagine that anybody that does have a koi pond, and every time I kind of see it in a movie, I've never had one, that's just a place of relaxation.
Yeah.
So teach your dog to relax back there. All right, next.
When is my dog allowed to come off her bed?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So you've started place training, and you've shown the dog those 3 things that I recommend to teach the dog, which is, that getting all 4 of your feet on the bed is good, putting your butt down and elbows down on the bed, and staying there is like the single best thing that you can do when I tell you to. And then also showing the dog that if you come off the bed and we specifically didn't ask you, that we're going to keep putting you back and you don't get food when you do that. So we always start dogs that way. So if you initiate a command, if you tell your dog to go to their place, to go to their bed, okay, if you give either one of those commands, then the dog can only come off when you or another family member releases them. But I want to throw something extra out there that I don't think I talk about quite enough. So we work these drills like place stays with dogs. And when you're working the place stay with a dog, let's just say that your dog happens to get up on the bed of their own accord. So that you've been training the dog, and then you all of a sudden you see your dog walk over to their place and get onto the bed. This is really the time that you want to reward the dog, I think. Because they just made the choice of their own volition, and if you show them that thing that they did of their own volition is fundamentally rewarding, then they're more likely to do it again without you having to ask, which I think that's even more valuable than you actually telling them to do it, because then maybe they'll offer it when it's actually not so easy to do. So for sure, show your dog that they have to stay when you tell them to, but also begin to reward them whenever they go and naturally do it on their own, and don't take that for granted. Heck, can we all maybe make a commitment that, for the rest of the summer, that every time that our dogs offer one of these behaviors that's very useful to us in difficult circumstances, that we would all go over there and actually reward them for doing those kinds of things. So yeah, you can release your dog from their command anytime you want. So if they put themselves on the bed, they can come off when they want. But if you tell them to go there, then they can only come off when you or another family member releases from that. And that doesn't mean that your family member rang the doorbell. That means that your family member actually gave some kind of voice command. All right.
Okay.
Next.
So I have a question.
Yeah, ask away.
So if they're on their place on their own accord, but then you decide that you need them to stay there, do you remove them and put them back on? Or should you be able to just tell them to stay?
Yes. So it depends on where your dog is at, right?
Right. Let's just assume that they haven't learned. You would probably have to remove them and put them back on if you needed to be able to.
Yeah, I think it's hard because they can't talk to you and tell you what they actually understand, right?
Yeah.
So when I think about this question, because I think about it a lot, I try out different things. I think you should actually try to tell, let's say that your dog is on their place, they put themselves on there, and you get a text message because your neighbor is going
Yeah,
to come over and,
right.
get, I don't know,
Right.
something, right? You could look, I think that you should try at that moment and look at your dog and say, place, or go to your bed, or stay. Use what you've been using.
Okay.
But then at that point, then you say, okay, watch what happens next. Then when Nancy, rings the doorbell, right? See what happens. And then, maybe say like, hey, could you maybe bring that back tomorrow and text me before you come? And so then you have the situation where now she's going to text you, you take the dog off, put the dog back on, and then have the same circumstance. And I think you'll get a lot of insight. One of the things that I really like doing is I like figuring out what works and what doesn't. Because as dog trainers, we don't know your dogs as well as you do, but the good thing is we have experience and we can generalize that, hey, your dog is kind of like these other dogs. So as I try different things with dogs, I kind of want to observe. The difficult part for us is that we don't watch them.
Yeah.
We don't watch them. We're kind of in automatic mode in our home. That's where should be our most relaxed. And so, yeah, we're maybe not watching the dogs the way that we normally would when we're in training mode. Mm-hmm. So put yourself into training mode in your head and become observant. And I always recommend this to people, like when your dog gets something right and you're deploying reward, are you deploying a reward that's for you, or are you deploying a reward that's for them? Because those are real tricky right there. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times, like I'll see this in families all the time that, I'll be there for a training session, and then we release the dog at the bed off their place before I leave, and then they're sitting on the couch, and the dog comes over and they give this humongous reward because their dog did so well in the session. Mm-hmm. And then I ask them, well, why didn't you give them that reward while they were on their bed? And why? Because we like to get rewarded by our dogs because it feels really good.
Yeah.
So.
True.
Yeah. So does that?
Okay. Yeah. That
okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so just watch what they do. Watch what they do, and become observant, and then help your dog to be the best version of themselves. Because only humanity is we're the only ones that can lead the dogs to becoming the best version of themselves. They're just not naturally going to do it on their own.
Okay. Someone wants to know if you have a type of flea or tick prevention that you recommend.
I do, but there's so many of them, and I know that there's one in my head, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus right now on the show, but there's one brand that I just never would give. It's a 3-in-1, and that's as far as I'm going to go. But I've seen some really, really sad results, like bad stuff actually happening to dogs that are on this. But the best thing that you can do is, have a conversation with your veterinarian about, what's right for your dog, and and get a couple of opinions. But I'll tell you what I do. I seldomly treat my dogs for fleas. And we do the heartworm stuff. I do some kind of a modified not rabies vaccine, but vaccination schedule for them. But when it comes to flea prevention, I tend to get a pest control company involved. I have them treat my yard, and I also have them treat my wooden privacy fence that I have around my backyard, and that tends to do a really good job. So in the event that I have a flea land on me after I've done all that, then we're going to the veterinarian. Yeah. But in general, it just doesn't happen. Yeah. I've heard, diffusing cedar in your home kind of keeps them away, but I haven't really seen that that's all that effective. I've seen a lot of different things, but for sure, getting your yard treated, getting your fence treated, I think is a pretty wise step. And then seeing your veterinarian. But your veterinarian really is a person to ask about this. But I'm personally one of those that I really want the minimum amount of chemicals in my dog's bloodstream. I think that they have particularly strong genetics for the dogs that I'm getting, and so that's the way that I go. But I think that modern medicine is pretty incredible. Lay down, buddy. Lay down. That modern medicine is pretty incredible. There's a lot that can be said to that, but have good, educated conversations with those professionals.
Okay. One more question.
Lay down, buddy.
Someone said, when should I use a prong collar?
There's a lot of different instances where you might want to use a prong collar. So why am I using a prong collar with Gabby right now? I'm using a prong collar with Gabby to actually create some precision in our healing because I can't explain that with some of the other mechanics of the way that I work with a dog. So I think that the 2¼ millimeter prong collar made by Herm Springer is a fantastic tool for teaching the dog some precision in the healing. If you're using it for correction, I really don't recommend the prong collar for the best tool for any kind of punishment. But that doesn't mean it can't. But here's another good example. If your dog is really struggling with pulling, prong collar training to teach the dog boundaries is actually really, really effective. But you have to kind of know your dog and already have kind of a sense for how they read pressure, because there's different sizes on prong collars. And when I'm talking about the sizes, I'm not talking about like the diameter of the collar as it pertains to going around your dog's neck. What I'm actually talking about is the size of the tips that actually make contact, because that's actually the working mechanism of the collar. So you have your 2¼ millimeter, your 3 millimeter, your 4 millimeter tips. And so these different tips actually communicate in different ways to the dog. And so if you've been using a flat buckle collar or even a martingale or something like that, and you have a dog that's really pulling very heavily, I think the martingale is the safest way to go, because it's going to prevent injuries that those collars can create by collapsing the trachea and putting too much pressure on the esophagus. A prong collar cannot tighten to the degree to actually cause an injury on the dog. Any of the injuries that you see that are coming from prong collars are in general coming because people are leaving them on their dogs, and the dog is growing into the collar, which is a really bad thing. So your prong collar should come on and off when you're actually going to do training with it. It should not stay on your dog. So I think you should use a prong collar for precision. I think that if you have a really heavy puller, it's a fantastic tool because you don't really need any timing. Your dog will automatically correct themselves by pulling on it, and it's actually a pretty effective device where dogs don't continue to pull against a properly sized prong collar. The real guesswork is what size prong collar you should use. And it's just not so easy for me to tell you. I don't think I can even articulate how do you determine which size prong collar. I really need to see the dog and have them on like a different type of leash and collar before I make the determination of what size I should put on them. So, yeah, do we have any other?
Yeah, Andrea wants to know if you feed raw food.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about this right now, and so I've been reading a lot of articles and just kind of thinking about what's going on. So, do I feed raw food? I do feed a little bit of raw food, but I'm going to tell you that I don't feed it on a daily basis. I think the last time I fed raw food was maybe about 6 months ago, but I do introduce some raw things from time to time. The thing that I'm always telling people about raw food is it's probably the single best way to actually feed your dog if you know what you're doing. And I don't know the name of the website, but it's worth looking into it. Rodney Habib, he's got a pretty large presence on Facebook, but I think he has a website called planetpaws.ca. It's a Canadian website, but they have recipes that he and Dr. Karen Becker have put together. I think you can buy one of these recipes for maybe like $1.50 or maybe $5 or something like that. And the recipe card is balanced for an adult dog. And so it tells you like half an eggshell, a full egg yolk, a cup of spinach, 2 pounds of, and I'm just making this up. This is not an actual recipe. Do not feed this to your dog. But like they have recipes on their site that are actually balanced for adult dogs. However, the feeding of puppies is something that you need to be very careful with. There's a lot of micronutrient concerns when it comes to feeding puppies. So I don't feed raw. I think that it is a very nutritionally beneficial thing to do. So if you have a dog that's already pretty well trained, and you want to take their training to the next level, then feeding raw and making sure that your play relationship with them and that you're using play to reinforce the behaviors you're looking for is the way to go. If you're a puppy owner, should you feed raw? I can't see the benefit of it because you can feed some of these really great high-end foods, and obviously there's a lot of debate about that, but I like Origin, I like From, I like Acana, Taste of the Wild, all these foods seem to me, with my dogs and over a decade of eating these foods, to be very healthy for them. And I like the utility of actually being able to feed puppies kibble versus a raw food. So kibble, which maybe isn't as nutritionally valuable, but it is transactionally valuable to help build the behaviors that you're looking to set in your dog. So that's why I like kibble over raw food. But I like the raw food when you have the time to really get into these recipes, learn how to make them, get the family involved in feeding the dogs this kind of diet, and then working your dogs for their favorite games. All right.
Okay.
So is that
That's
it?
it for today. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks so much to each and every one of you guys for watching tonight. Hey, if you're watching this sometime in the future, or you're watching this right now, and you haven't hit the subscribe button, it would mean so much to me if you'd hit that subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, then you need to hit the notification bell, so that way the next time that I go live, you know that we're here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have, help support you in your goals and your dreams for your dog. So, hey, thanks everybody for watching tonight. We appreciate you guys. Y'all take care. Good night.